Men dream of women. Women dream of themselves being dreamt of. Men look at women. Women watch themselves being looked at. Women constantly meet glances which act like mirrors, reminding them of how they look or how they should look. Behind every glance is a judgment. Sometimes the glance they meet is their own, reflected back from a real mirror. A woman is always accompanied, except when quite alone, perhaps even then, by her own image of herself. While she is walking across a room or weeping at the death of her father, she cannot avoid envisaging herself walking or weeping. From earliest childhood, she is taught and persuaded to survey herself continually. She has to survey everything she is and everything she does, because how she appears to others, and particularly how she appears to men, is of crucial importance for what is normally thought of as the success of her life.
The term male gaze was coined by a film theorist Laura Mulvey in her 1975 essay, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. Though the idea of the male gaze was first produced by John Paul Sartre in his book Being and Nothingness, where Paul explores the way in which the act of gazing at another human being creates a power imbalance, as the gazed at being perceived as an object by the gazer, rather than a human being, in most cases having men being the gazer and women being the gazed at. According to Laura Mulvey, there are three categories of the male gaze. 1, that of the man behind the camera. 2, that of the male character within the story. 3, that of the audience. The male gaze is further explored in a way in which the gaze impacts the way women view themselves, having only witnessed themselves represented in the eyes of men, and how men view women, and really how women view themselves. Having subconsciously learned and internalized this gaze, it creates a dissociation with oneself. The male gazer is not only an external figure within the lives of women, but an inescapable surveyor that lives in a woman's mind. And through this internalization, women succumb to the dehumanization of her own self, seeing herself only as an object to be consumed. I want us to dissect the psychosocial relation that society has to attractive women, and as the result of the male gaze. A film I believe expresses these dynamics perfectly is a film called Malena, released in 2000. The story of Malena is a story of the most beautiful woman in her town. The story is told through the eyes of the protagonist, a young Italian boy named Renato. This makes the film a very interesting study of the male gaze and its effect on women's relationship with each other and themselves. In the film, Renato's first encounter with Malena was when he was sitting with his friends and they were all mesmerized watching this beautiful woman walk down the street with her eyes on the ground so as to avoid the male gaze that resuscitated her objectification. As Malena passes the boys, Renato experiences a newfound sensations. He becomes sexually awakened by simply laying eyes on Malena. The boy stays linger long after Malena has passed, highlighting the relationship of boys to women and how a boy becomes a man through the spectatorship of a woman's sexuality. And this doesn't stop at the age of maturity. To many men, yet to undergo a spiritual ascension, a beautiful woman is only for viewing pleasure. This asserts the idea that the experience of being a beautiful woman is a haunting reminder of how beauty can be tragically cemented as the experience of only being perceived but really understood. Malena's husband is in the army fighting abroad, and therefore she lives alone in the town. Due to Malena's undeniable beauty, she becomes the subject of intense lust by the men and intense hatred and jealousy by the women. And due to the lust Malena invokes in men, she is frequently dehumanized, sought after but not respected. She is discussed by men in the town as if she was not a human being. Simone de Beauvoir, in her essay The Second Sex, 1949, states that the girl feels that her body is getting away from her. On the street, men follow with their eyes and comment on her anatomy. She would like to be invisible. It frightens her to become flesh and to show flesh. Malena really speaks throughout the film. Much of the dialogue is between the other characters' perception of her beauty. The effect that beauty has on others is either intoxicating or toxic. Renato feels entitled to Malena's most intimate moments as he spies on her, and the men in her town feel entitled to her attention and time simply because she's a beautiful woman. And as seen in Malena, when you're a beautiful woman, your body no longer belongs to you, but you're a public commodity. The proximity to beauty is the value that men placed on her. The women watch as they complain under their breaths in the language of jealousy, projecting their insecurities on Malena, ostracizing her in an effort to preserve what little self-esteem they have. This highlights the division that the male gaze creates in women in relation to themselves and other women. Freud's psychological theory of the Madonna and mistress complex suggests that where some men love, they cannot desire, and where some men desire, they cannot love. This theory suggests that women are forced into one of these two boxes: pure, motherly, and nurturing, the Madonna, or tainted, depraved, and sexual, the mistress. Though the Madonna is respected, she is not desired. Though the mistress is desired, she is not respected. Though Malena is married like most women in her town and has been faithful to her husband, it doesn't stop the town from lumping her into the mistress category, merely due to the sexual desire she invokes in men as a result of her beauty, therefore proving the theory being less about women's autonomy, but more so about how said autonomy is perceived by men. Showing how the male gaze strips women of their power, the Madonna being stripped of their natural need to be desired by their own husbands and the men they love, and the mistress being stripped of her humanity and reduced down to an object of desire, with men finding it hard or even offensive to fully recognize beautiful women as sophisticated beings that have intelligence and tender hearts. This dynamic therefore creates a division in womanhood, pitting one woman, the Madonna, against another woman, the mistress. The women in the town sit in the library, discussing Malena as the result of the male attention that follows, and therefore they see Malena as a threat, making her a target of sexual rumors. They gossip about her rather than defend her. Malena's husband then dies at war. Malena is stricken with grief at this point, but rather than being comforted and receiving empathy from the town, her dehumanization only accelerates. The men cheer at the death of her husband, as this now means Malena was now available for the taking. The women grow increasingly jealous and threatened as the death of her husband increases the perceived threat. This highlights the chronic isolation beautiful women experience in the community they live in. Even in her grief, Malena is undeserving of respect and sympathy, but she's merely a sexual object for men, and likewise only a vessel in which women can project their insecurities. Malena's father is a local teacher in the town when a group of young boys decide to write a letter to Malena's father stating that, "You're dishonored. Your daughter is sleeping with the whole town." Subsequently, the father quit the school and disowned his daughter, once again the truth being irrelevant to the people of the town. Since the death of her husband, the town's women felt more empowered to gossip about her, which led to false allegations and charges brought against her by one of the town's women as an adulterer and homewrecker. The lawyer speaks out on behalf of Malena in court, stating, "She committed no other crime than that of being ill-fated, alone and beautiful. Here is her crime, her beauty, and from here, the envy, the lies, the disgrace that have deprived her of even her father's love." Although Malena wins the battle, she loses the war, as her vicious lawyer declares that she can pay him with access to her body instead of money, and he proceeds to molest her, thus reminding Malena of the harsh reality of being a beautiful woman where everybody wants her but nobody truly sees her. Malena is stricken with grief again as she loses her father in the debris of war, and during the funeral procession, the men are staring at her body and she's once again being objectified, dehumanized, reduced to a visual experience to be had. Laura Mulvey writes in her essay, Fears, Fantasies, and the Male Gaze Unconscious. Women are constantly confronted with their own image in one form or another, but what they see bears little relation or relevance to their own unconscious fantasies, their own hidden fears and desires. They are being turned all the time into objects of display, to be looked at and stared at by men. Yet, in real sense, women aren't there at all. The parade has nothing to do with women and everything to do with men. The true narcissistic exhibit is always the phallus. Women are simply scenery onto which men project their fantasies. The next time we see Malena, she walks to the town square with an entirely new look. She's wearing black for the grief and dark internal transformation she's undergoing, with scarlet red hair to match. The most obvious is in her eyes. This is the first time she actually makes eye contact with everyone in an act of defiance. She walks up to the cafe and pulls out a cigarette as the men rush to light it for her. A tear descends down her cheek in the realization that this is all she'll ever amount to in the eyes of the people. Just a pretty face. And once that has faded, she'll have nothing and no one. In this very heart-wrenching scene, the women are completely overtaken by envy and jealousy as they drag Malena out mercilessly to beat her. The men simply watch the women punish her for the crimes they stamped on her. They put a target on her back when they made Malena the object of their lust. The jealousy that ignited in the bellies of the women turned into pure hatred. The scissors came out and they cut her head off, one of the women screaming, "Let's see what the men make of you now." As in, now that you don't have your beauty, your hair, now that you bruised and beaten, now that we took away the value they placed on you, now what are you? Susan Sontag, in her essay A Woman's Beauty, she writes, "To be sure, beauty is a form of power, and deservedly so. What is lamentable is that it is the only form of power that most women are encouraged to seek. The power is always conceived in relation to men. It is not the power to do, but the power to attract. It is a power that negates itself, for this power is not one that can be chosen freely, at least not by women, or renounced without social censure." And for Malena, it was the men who fantasized their desires on her, and it was the townswomen that projected their damaged self-esteem and envy of her beauty onto her. She was ill-fated as being irredeemable for her ultimate sin, her beauty. After her fall from grace, Malena's husband returns for more, bruised and humbled, and Malena returns to her old ways of no eye contact. The same women who engaged in her violation comment on her on how she has aged and put on weight, while still acknowledging her timeless beauty. And for one moment, after all the pain, the isolation, and violence she experienced, she's treated how she's always wanted to be treated, like a human with a soul. Her work is different. She's been beaten into submission and into conformity. In some sense, just as Renato, we are viewers of Malena's life, enchanted by Malena's beauty, but unable to do anything to protect her. And I also wanted to touch on Malena's husband is an exemplary man, insulted by the pretentiousness of the male gaze. He is the embodiment of the reasons why she chose him to marry and why she loved him resiliently, whereas other men could only daydream of being in his position, in their eyes having Malena all to themselves. This also highlights, Malena's husband also highlights the target that instantly is put on the man's back when they start dating a woman that is considered to be extremely attractive. You will also be a victim of the male gaze. Other men will try to poke holes in the marriage or relationship you have with the attractive women. Other women will try to poke holes as well. So the love that Malena's husband had for her was very resilient and very rock solid. And watching this man and how he sticks by her is a wake-up call to a lot of men to learn to actually talk to beautiful women and see beautiful women without daydreaming of watching her. So this is a video that highlights, or rather dissects, the psychosocial relationship that the society has with attractive women, and more especially the effect of the male gaze on women and the relationship they have to themselves and other women. If you enjoyed the video, let me know down below in the comments, and please like, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye.